I grew up in an anxious family. We worried about everything. My father actually made lists of things to worry about, from the very smallest to the very biggest. You name it, we worried about it. And I thought everybody else worried the same way we did. I thought that, like me, all my classmates were terrified they'd be called on in class. I thought they stayed awake nights like I did, worrying about having to take a test or sit alone in the cafeteria. When I was older, I thought those friends, like me, felt nauseous before social events or spent time imagining their plane was going to crash, or that they worried all the time that they were going to end up homeless. But even though I believed they were worrying too, I noticed that somehow all of that worrying didn't seem to be bothering other people the way it was bothering my life. And along the way, I decided that everybody else was in on some secret that I just didn't get. I figured that somehow they were smarter or better or wiser than I was, and there was something wrong with me. So I worried my way through school and on into adulthood, and I probably would have just kept on worrying if it weren't for the moment that changed my life. I remember that day so clearly. I was in my 30s, and I was telling my husband how worried I was about the upcoming holidays. I remember saying I was afraid we wouldn't get the house cleaned, the shopping done, and the cooking ready in time. He was listening, but he did not seem concerned. And I remember saying to him, "Why aren't you worried?" He looked at me and shrugged and said, "What's there to worry about?" I remember being stunned and silent for a moment. Was he kidding? What wasn't there to be worried about? And so I repeated the to-do list to him just to convince him that he should be worried too. What if the house isn't clean? What if the food isn't great? What if we give somebody the wrong present? What if we don't get the decorations up, or what if we don't get the baking done in time? And he said, "So what? So what? What was wrong with him? Couldn't he see how important it was to get everything done on time without mistakes? Why wasn't he worried what people would think, what people would say about us if we failed to do it perfectly?" When I was done reading the list, he shrugged and said what he always says, "It'll be all right." "No, it won't," I said right back, thinking there was something really wrong with him, and that he couldn't see how stressful and terrifying the whole situation was. He looked more confused than ever and said to me, "How do you know?" "I know because I started, and then I stopped, because I realized I didn't know. Neither of us knew what was going to happen. But he was choosing to believe that things would work out. And so he was just able to go on with his life. I, on the other hand, was imagining the absolute worst. I was paralyzing myself with fearful thoughts about what might possibly happen in the future. I was thinking thoughts that were making me miserable. And worst of all, I was making it all up. None of those thoughts were true. They were my imagination. I remember standing there and thinking, what if this isn't all about him? What if this is really about me? And that was the moment I realized that all my worrying wasn't everyone else's experience. That was the moment I realized I was different. I had anxiety. I remember being both shocked and relieved at the same time. Shocked at the idea that there were actually people who went through life not worrying all the time, and relieved that I finally had a name for what was causing me so much pain and misery. I had anxiety. And I have to admit, I just want to get this in, that my husband and I have had all sorts of very similar conversations since then. And I am so grateful that every time I start to worry that terrible things might happen, my husband reminds me and always says, it'll be all right. So that's my story. And maybe your story is the same. Maybe you recognize this, but maybe your story of anxiety is completely different. Because the truth is, anxiety shows up differently for each and every one of us. The causes, the symptoms, the effects of our anxiety are different for each and every one of us. In the end, my anxiety is uniquely mine, and your anxiety is uniquely yours. Identifying the pieces of your unique, particular anxiety puzzle is the very first step in healing that anxiety. So as we take a look at all the ways anxiety affects our bodies, our thoughts, and our beliefs, not to mention the price we pay for that anxiety, I hope you'll start looking for those pieces of your anxiety puzzle. What does anxiety look like for you? So let's start by looking at the outward expression of anxiety, or the symptoms of your anxiety, because those symptoms can give us real clues into the causes, the effects, and the severity of your anxiety. In general, symptoms of anxiety fall into 3 categories: physical, emotional, and mental. We're going to start by taking a look at some physical symptoms of anxiety. Now, as we go over this list of physical symptoms, I hope you'll listen for the ones that have the biggest impact on your life. And no, this isn't an exhaustive list. Anxiety shows up differently for all of us. But this is a list of some of the more usual symptoms of physical anxiety. And that list includes things like sweating, nausea, trembling, tingling, twitching, pulsing, burning, tension in your body, unexplained headaches, unexplained dizziness, weakness, a pounding heart, chest pain, shortness of breath, or a sense of smothering. And those last 2 occur more frequently in women, feeling of smothering and the shortness of breath. Now, I have said this before, but I'm going to say it again. If you have any of these physical symptoms of anxiety or not, I encourage you strongly to check in with your healthcare provider. These are all symptoms of anxiety, but they can also be symptoms of some pretty serious physical disorders like a heart attack. So really important to rule out any physical disorder before we address your anxiety. Okay, those are the physical symptoms. Let's move on to the emotional symptoms. And again, notice the ones that apply to you. Feeling restless, feeling tense and jumpy, feeling irritable, feeling exhausted, feeling like you're alone all the time, feeling angry for no reason. Now, I hope you noticed that every one of those phrases started with the word feeling. And that's what we're talking about here, feelings. Your emotional symptoms show up in your feelings. On the other hand, cognitive symptoms of anxiety are all about how you think. Now, let me begin by saying, I know from personal experience, when you are really anxious, you may have trouble thinking at all. Your thoughts may be racing and you may be completely unable to focus. Been there, have the t-shirt. But you may also have thoughts like, I'm going crazy. I could lose control. I might become incapacitated. I have to worry because if I worry hard enough and long enough, that will keep me safe from whatever I'm worrying about. I won't be able to handle whatever's ahead of me. I'm going to end up old, broke, and alone. I'm going to die. We're all going to die. Ah! Those are the cognitive symptoms of anxiety. All right, did any of those symptoms sound familiar to me, to you, to what they do to me? Believe me, we are not alone. But I want to ask you, did you find your symptoms were more physical, maybe emotional, or were they cognitive? They were about your thoughts. Maybe they were a combination of the three. But no matter how your symptoms show up, what they look like, knowing them gives you a clear picture of how anxiety shows up in your life, the impact it is having. Which brings me to what I call the cost of anxiety, the price we pay for being anxious, and we do pay a price. Truth is, anxiety can have a tremendously negative impact on our lives. It can cause difficulties in relationships, struggles at work, at school, and at home. Most importantly, anxiety can cause us to miss important moments in our lives. Anxiety can keep you a prisoner in your home. It can limit your life and make you feel less than, make you feel like you're not good enough. Worst of all, anxiety can make you feel lonely, lost, and hopeless. So let me ask you, have you ever stopped to consider the price you are paying for your anxiety? What have you missed? What do you wish you could have done? What do you regret not doing? What would you do if you decided in this instance that the price you're paying for your anxiety is too high and you're ready to make some changes? To that end, I want to share the stories of two women who did just that. They decided their anxiety was costing them way too much, and then they did something about it. And as I'm talking about them, I hope you'll be thinking about how anxiety shows up in your life and ask yourself if you want to continue paying that price, or maybe, just maybe, you might be ready to consider making some changes. So let's start with Whitney. Whitney was terrified of driving over the long, high drawbridge that spanned the river that divided her hometown. Just the thought of driving up and over this arching 4-lane highway made her hands sweat and her whole body shake. If she needed to get to the other side of town, Whitney would drive nearly 45 minutes out of her way just to avoid that 10-minute trip over that bridge. That meant she didn't get to see her friends who lived on the other side of town much. She rarely shopped over there, and she put off going to the dentist and the doctor because it took so long to get to their offices. And Whitney had great excuses for not crossing that bridge. She told anybody who'd listen that she had so many friends, she didn't have time to see everyone. She had more choices when she shopped online. She didn't need to see her healthcare professionals because she was healthy as a horse. And besides, she liked the scenic route. But in spite of all those excuses, Whitney knew her fear of driving across that bridge was literally keeping her a prisoner on her side of the river. And she was able to continue to pretend everything was fine until the day her son and his newly pregnant wife moved to the other side of that river. At that point, the price was too high. Whitney couldn't pretend anymore. If she wanted to continue seeing her young son and his young family several times a week, she was going to have to find a way to drive over that bridge. Let me say it again. The price had become too high for Whitney. It was costing her too much, and she knew it was time she did something about it. So, the day after she heard about the expected grandchild, Whitney went online and she started reading. And she quickly learned she wasn't the only one who was afraid to drive over bridges. There were lots of people who had the same fear. And that fear had a name, gephrophobia. She also learned that her fellow gephrophobes had come up with some really great ways to deal with their fear. Drawing from their suggestions, Whitney put together a toolkit of breathing techniques, acupressure points, and affirmations she could use whenever she felt the tiniest bit of panic, even thinking about driving over the bridge. She practiced as often as possible, and she knew it usually took 6 to 9 months to be able to successfully deal with her gephrophobia, and she decided that was the perfect time frame. She was determined to be able to cross that bridge in time to welcome that first grandchild. So Whitney began to visualize successfully driving over the bridge. When she felt comfortable with her visualization, she decided to ride across the bridge with another driver. She asked her sister to drive her, and they created a great list of music. And early one morning, Whitney put in her earbuds, focused on the music as she and her sister made their first successful trip across that bridge. For the next few months, Whitney continued to ride back and forth over the bridge with her sister or a friend, each time focusing on the music, doing her affirmations and breathing techniques to keep herself calm. When it came time for her first solo drive across the bridge, Whitney asked her sister to ride with her. She turned up her music full blast and sang along with the music at the top of her lungs all the way across the bridge. Later, her sister told her about the strange look they'd gotten from some of the other drivers as Whitney literally sang her way across the bridge. "They were looking at you like you were crazy," her sister said, "but the truth is you did a great job, and I am so proud of you." 6 weeks later, Whitney drove all the way across the bridge on her own to welcome her new granddaughter. Yay, Whitney! Whitney made a change, and so did Lena. Let me share Lena's story. For Lena, life was going on and everything was fine. Her fear and her feeling of being overwhelmed by life seemed to show up out of nowhere. At 36, she was being treated for infertility, and not being able to get pregnant was all she could think about. She felt guilty for putting off having a family until she had established herself in her career as an architect. She felt guilty for not being able to give her husband, Jeff, a child, and she was sick of seeing smiling pregnant women everywhere she went, not to mention all the medical tests, the interventions, and the uncertainty that lay ahead. As the time neared for her first treatment, Lena's appetite seemed to vanish until all she was eating was yogurt and orange juice. She lost weight. She and Jeff argued so much she wondered if their 10-year marriage would survive the IVF treatment. And then the migraine started. Lena had always been proud of her ability to soldier on no matter how tough things got. She was not one of those women who went running for help at the first sign of trouble. But the headaches were so ferocious, she started missing work, and she felt like crying all the time. Finally, Lena decided she could not go on paying such a steep price for her fear. It was costing her too much. It was time for a change. And so at her next appointment with her doctor, she mentioned the migraines. To her surprise and relief, the doctor told her headaches could be a symptom of anxiety. She also mentioned that anxiety could lead to eating disorders, insomnia, addictions, and could be caused by things like heart disease, chronic respiratory disease, asthma, and COPD. When the doctor went on to question Lena about her loss of appetite, Lena admitted she was a wreck, physically and emotionally. She told her doctor about the troubles in her relationships, her inability to think about anything about her infertility, and her guilt. The doctor nodded and explained that anxiety can not only cause physical disorders, it can play havoc in relationships, and it can create real problems at work, at school, at home. Relieved to hear she was not sick or crazy, Lena was open to her doctor's suggestions for ways to feel better. Together, they came up with a plan. And let me just say at this point, having support and a plan can make a complete difference in healing anxiety. But we're going to talk more about that later. Anyway, the plan they came up with included couples counseling, a meditation group, and a consultation with a nutritionist. In time, Lena added a weekly massage to help ease her physical stress, and she and Jeff scheduled a romantic getaway to the Cape. Counseling helped Lena and Jeff grow closer than ever. Meditation and the healthy eating plan helped Lena feel better physically, and within a few weeks, migraines vanished. 6 months later, Lena got the good news. She was pregnant. Let me just say, the doctor said no one's sure what role anxiety plays in fertility. It wasn't a magical cure, but Lena believes that the steps she took to ease her anxiety and to feel better physically helped the process along. So let's come back to you. Let me ask you again about the price you are paying for your fear. Like Whitney, have you missed any events or important appointments? A prom, a special reunion, your best friend's wedding, medical appointments? Has your performance suffered at work? Have you passed up a job you really wanted? Or has anxiety kept you from leaving a job you really hate? Did you struggle in school because of anxiety? Did you give up on yourself at some point? Maybe you're suffering physical symptoms. Maybe you're having trouble sleeping, or you're eating too much or too little. Maybe you're smoking or drinking or shopping too much. Maybe you're running too much, working too hard, or sleeping all the time. How about your relationships? Are you afraid to speak up for what you want in a relationship? Are you staying with someone in a relationship that no longer works? Is anxiety keeping you from meeting new people, maybe even meeting someone special? Does anxiety keep you from getting close to the people around you? Take a minute and think about exactly what your anxiety has cost you in the past and what it's costing you right now. Let me ask you, are you willing to continue to pay that price? Or like Whitney and Lena, are you ready to start making some changes? If so, let's agree to work together to put together an anxiety-busting toolkit you can use to help you face your fears. Let's create a plan for easing your anxiety and helping you step back into life. And we begin putting that plan together with our next module.